Hi, I'm Steve Mann and this is Paper Classroom. Welcome to another one of our fibres tutorials. In this particular tutorial we're going to talk about the effect of growing conditions on wood fibres. Now what can happen, there can be a prevailing wind. So rather than trees growing straight as we expect to see here, they can grow with a bend in them like this. Don't believe me? Here's a picture. And in that particular part of the world, all the trees grow like that. Anyway, let's get back to the topic. So, where trees grow upright, gravity affects all the cells in the same way. When trees grow like this with a bend on them, then gravity isn't behaving as it should do, and it makes changes to the hormones within the tree. And the effect of the hormones is to change the nature of the cellulose fibres and also the cellulose to lignin ratio. So where wood fibres do not behave normally, we call that reaction wood because it's reacting to unusual conditions. On the outside of the bend there, we call it tension wood because the wood is pulled. And on the inside of the bend here, we call it compression wood because as it bends over, it's compressed. So if we look first of all at compression wood tends to occur in softwood trees, so pine, fir and spruce. And what's happening here is all this wood is being compressed. The tree reacts trying to straighten it up, and so it produces more lignin and less fibre. So the wood in this area tends to be darker in colour and as little as 30% cellulose. In hardwoods, so eucalyptus, beech, birch, it tends to occur on the outside of the curb where the fibres are stretched, and this is called tension wood. The wood in this area can be as much as 60% cellulose as the tree tries to generate extra fibres to straighten it up. So, an unusual phenomenon, but there we go. Moving on. If we look at different species of trees grown in different parts of the world, you can see there's a wide range of cropping times. So here we have a list of the countries, the species that we're talking about, the rotation, so from planting to cropping and replanting, and the yield. Now the yield is how many cubic meters of wood do you obtain per hectare per year. And a hectare, as I've shown you there, is a square that's 100 meters by 100 meters. So 10,000 square meters. So how much wood do you get in a year from 10,000 square meters? So interesting thing is, somewhere like Brazil, it's quite moist but constantly hot. If you're growing eucalyptus there, it can be as little as 7 years from planting a sapling to harvesting the tree. And because the rotation time is so slow, so little, they can obtain 50 cubic meters of wood per hectare per year on average. If you take the exact opposite, somewhere like Canada there, growing a softwood, growing spruce, then the rotational period is 90 years. So from planting a sapling to harvesting the final product 90 years, which gives a yield of just 2 cubic meters per hectare per year. So clearly, in this sort of situation, you cannot just plant trees and then wait for them to grow before you harvest them and get all that money. You'll have starved to death a long time before that. So you have to have other strategies. For example, you plant lots and lots more trees than you really need, and regularly you take thinnings. You thin out to give room for what's left, and the material that you've thinned out you then you sell, and that becomes a source of income. So places like Chile, also softwood like Canada, but growing pine, 25 years rotation. Iberia is the collective name for Spain and Portugal, and Spain and Portugal are well known for having forests of eucalyptus that are cropped. And as you can see here, 12 to 15 years rotation time, because, okay, it does rain quite a bit there, but it's also warm all year round. So there's some interesting numbers there on growth rates. I won't go through all of them. Moving on to the effect of growth rates. If you are in a warm country with plenty of water around, then the fibres that the tree grows are like these fibres here, these fine fibres. They have a very thin wall and they have a very wide lumen so that they can suck up all that water and transmit it all around the tree. If you're in a cold country, it's really hard to get that water out of the ground and to transfer it around the tree. So the tree grows fibres with very thick walls, so it has only a small lumen, and the smaller the lumen, the greater the sucking power. We've talked about this in earlier videos. It's what we call capillary action. With capillaries, the smaller the hole, the more powerful the sucking power. If you take a glass rod and you stretch it and you make it, say, as thin as a hair, then water will rise to 32 feet until the height of the column, the weight of the water, reaches atmospheric pressure. So, if you're in a country like the UK, where we have our extreme seasons, very hot summers to very cold winters, you will get a mixture of these type of fibres in every tree every year. You'll get a gradation from spring fibres here through to late fibres there, as we discussed in a previous video. However, if you're in a country where it's very much the same all year round, the fibres in the tree will be very much the same all the way through. So if you're in somewhere like Canada with that 90-year turnaround time, all the fibres will be like this. They'll have thick walls and a very small lumen. If you're growing it in Brazil, you'll have very thin walls and a very big lumen. And as you can see, we call this property fibre coarseness. And I have some little wooden models here to represent these things, just to go through them with you. So, if we're talking about coarse fibres, then because they have a thick wall and a thin lumen, that thick wall will resist refining. The fibres will never collapse completely into flat ribbons. They will remain very much tube-like. Because they remain very much tube-like, for a given grammage, you'll have a relatively high bulk, in other words, a relatively high thickness or caliper of the sheet. Because it's got these big holes in, it will have very good tear resistance. It'll also have a very high porosity. It's easy to push air through. And of course, it's not an even surface, it's rough, so it's not very good for printing on. But these big holes are really good for soaking up liquid. So fibres from this sort of area, coarse fibres as we call them, will make great tissue products. Because there's very little contact area, it won't be very strong, so tensile will be quite low. If we move along to this fibre now, these are the so-called fine fibres, the one with very low coarseness. Because they have such a thin wall, during the refining process, they will very easily collapse. So, same grammage as this one, but look how much thinner it is. Therefore, this sheet will have a much higher density. It's smoother, so it's great for printing on. The holes are very small, so it's not very good for absorbing water, so it would not make good tissue. There's lots of contact area with these flattened out fibres, so you get great tensile strength. Hard to push air through, so low porosity. High tensile strength, smooth, fantastic for printing. So fibres with a low coarseness will make great printing and writing paper, but very poor tissue. Fibres with a high coarseness will make great tissue, but poor printing and writing papers. So, I hope that makes sense to you. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new. Please feel free to comment and please enjoy our other videos, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos.